Well, it ended just as suddenly as it all began. After only 14 months, Manchester United's latest big project has completely imploded with the shocking dismissal of their manager, Ruben Amorim. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about a few bad results on the pitch. No, this was a story about a power struggle, a war over tactics, and a total breakdown of the club's entire vision. So let's break down the anatomy of this collapse.
And this was the moment it all boiled over. This single explosive statement. Right after a really disappointing 1-1 draw with their bitter rivals Leeds, Amorim decided to go public with everything that was frustrating him. You know, these words were a direct shot, a challenge to the club's new leadership, and believe me, they turned out to be the final straw.
His time at Old Trafford was just a total whirlwind. I mean, look at this. He was appointed back in November 2024 to take over from Erik ten Hag, and he actually managed to get the team all the way to a Europa League final. But then, just 14 chaotic months later, poof, it was all over. A really brief and frankly turbulent reign.
Okay, so first up, let's look at the flashpoint itself. That moment the club just decided, that's it, we're pulling the trigger.
So, January 5th, that was the day the official news broke. After a whole string of poor results, that draw at Elland Road was literally the end of the road for him. Amorim was told the decision was made, and he left his job immediately, plunging the club right back into total uncertainty.
And when you look at the hard data behind the decision, well, it kind of tells its own story, doesn't it? A win rate of just 38% across 63 games? For a club with the ambitions of Manchester United, that is just not going to cut it. These numbers painted a really clear picture of stagnation and, let's be honest, underperformance.
But here's the real story. The results, they were just a symptom of a much, much deeper problem. The core issue here was a fundamental clash of philosophies, a battle over the very definition of his job at the club.
Now, to really get this conflict, you have to understand the difference between these two roles. The modern head coach is part of a bigger machine, right? They're focused only on the team. But the traditional manager, the Sir Alex Ferguson type, has this sweeping power over the entire footballing direction of the club. And that distinction, it's absolutely crucial to this whole mess.
And this conflict pitted two completely different models against each other. On one side, you had the club, under its new ownership, trying to build this modern structure where power was shared between CEO Amar Barada and Director of Football Jason Wilcox. But on the other side, you had Amorim, who walked in expecting that old-school, one-man-in-charge authority. These two visions were on a collision course from day one.
And this frustration just boiled over when it came to signing players. Amorim felt totally undermined. He believed the club just wasn't getting him the specific players he needed for his system. It's like he felt he was being asked to cook this gourmet meal, but wasn't allowed to choose any of the ingredients.
And this fight wasn't just happening behind closed doors in the boardroom. It spilled directly onto the pitch. And that led to a tactical standoff that, well, Amorim seemed completely unwilling to lose.
At the heart of the whole dispute was Amorim's rigid, almost religious devotion to a 3-4-3 formation. The director of football, Jason Wilcox, was apparently really unhappy about this. He believed the system just didn't fit the players they had and that it went against the club's entire identity of playing with a back four.
And the data really seemed to back Wilcox's point. The difference was stark. I mean, okay, the sample size for the other formation was small, but look at that. The team's points per game average was so much higher when they switched to a 4-2-3-1. But still, Amorim just kept going back to his preferred and clearly less effective system.
Which, it begs the obvious question, right? If the 3-4-3 clearly wasn't working, why on earth not adapt? This stubbornness was seen less as tactical conviction and more as a flat-out refusal to collaborate with the club's new structure. And you know what happens when there's a fight at the top? It inevitably spills over. When the manager and the board are at odds, it creates this toxic atmosphere that can just fracture a dressing room. First, let's just remember the context here. The club backed him, and they backed him in a big way. In the summer of 2025, they pumped over £200 million into bringing in players who were supposed to fit his vision. The financial stakes were just incredibly high.
We're talking about marquee players like Matheus Cunha, Bryan Mbeumo, and Benjamin Sesko, all brought in for huge fees. This was now Amorim's squad, built in his image. The pressure to make these expensive pieces work together was immense.
But instead of cohesion, there was just conflict. He clashed with the team's rising star, Alejandro Garnacho, over discipline. He sidelined the academy gem, Kobbie Mainoo, and even tried to sell him before the board had to step in and block it. And then his public criticism, calling the squad the worst in the history of the club. That prompted a public rebuke from a veteran like Christian Eriksen. The unity was completely gone.
So ultimately, this collapse wasn't just about one manager getting fired. It has thrown the club's entire long-term strategy into serious, serious doubt.
Remember when the new ownership came in? They announced Project 150, this ambitious, maybe even audacious plan to win the Premier League title by 2028. And Amorim? He was supposed to be the architect of that grand vision.
But even back then, there were doubts. One insider called the timeline brave or foolish. And now, with Amorim's failure, that reality has hit home, and it's hit home hard. The project is in tatters, and that 2028 target is looking more unlikely than ever.
And let's talk about the money, because wow, the financial cost of this revolving door is staggering. You've got the cost to fire the last manager, Erik ten Hag, then the compensation to hire Amorim from his old club, and now the massive expense of paying out his full contract. It's just a hugely expensive cycle of failure that the club cannot afford to repeat.
So, what happens now? Well, in the immediate aftermath, the club has turned to a familiar face to try and steady the ship. Former player Darren Fletcher is stepping in as interim manager, a safe pair of hands tasked with navigating the club through yet another storm.
Which brings this entire thing full circle. After all the turmoil, all the drama, all the money spent, the club is facing the exact same fundamental question they started with. Do they stick to their guns, stick to the new structure, and hire a coach who fits the system, or do they give in and find another all-powerful manager? Their answer to that question is going to define the entire future of Manchester United.